Development Bank of Nigeria should indeed be very proud of itself. The hall is still full, the discourse is engaging, the papers are brilliant. It's time now, as we make our exciting trajectory through the events of the day, we now arrive at one of the exciting highlights, which is the panel discussion. Again, to remind you that you have Q&A cards, please use them and submit them to the ushers. Let me quickly welcome to the stage the moderator for this panel discussion, Professor Nnanna from the Office of the Chief Economist, Development Bank of Nigeria. Professor Nnanna. Professor Nnanna is sitting at the far end of the panel suite. Thank you. Shall we welcome to the podium Professor Akpan Hogan Ekpo.
Professor Akpan Hogan Ekpo. Professor Akpan Hogan Ekpo is a Nigerian economist. He is currently the Director General of the West African Institute for Financial and Economic Management in Lagos, Nigeria. He is a former Vice Chancellor of the University of Uyo, Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Professor Ekpo is also a former director at the Central Bank of Nigeria. He obtained a PhD in economics from the University of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Professor Ekpo has over 170 publications. He has consulted for several national and international organizations such as the National Planning Commission of Nigeria, the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, Economic Commission for Africa, among others. He belongs to several professional associations such as the Nigerian Economic Society, American Economic Association, among others. He is a member of the board of the African Institute of Applied Economics and the Clement Isong Foundation in Nigeria.
Help me welcome Mrs. Ndidi Uneli.
Mrs. Ndidi Uneli. Mrs. Ndidi Uneli is the founder of Leap Africa, a co-founder of Ace Food Processing and Distribution, and a director at Sahel Capital Partners and Advisory Limited. She started her career as a management consultant with McKinsey & Company, working in their Chicago, New York, and Johannesburg offices. Ndidi holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and an undergraduate degree with honors in multinational and strategic management from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. She was recognized as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum and received a national honor, Member of the Federal Republic, from the Nigerian government. She was listed as one of the 20 youngest power African women by Forbes. Ndidi serves on numerous international and local boards, including Nestle Nigeria PLC, Nigerian Breweries India, and Royal DSM Sustainability Board, Netherlands, among others. Mrs. Ndidi Uneli is the author of Social Innovation in Africa, a practical guide for scaling impact, published by Ruttle Edge in 2016.
We're in for an exciting panel discussion, I have no doubt in my mind. Help me welcome Mr. Peter Bamkole.
Mr. Peter Bamkole. Mr. Peter Bamkole pioneered the Enterprise Development Center of the Pan-Atlantic University in January 2003, a model which has been replicated in 4 African countries: Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. Trained as a mechanical engineer in the UK with MBA from IASE Business School in Spain, his almost 3 decades cognate experience spans both the public and private sectors. He led the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women Initiative in Nigeria, Diamond Bank's Building Entrepreneurs Today, and a number of other partnerships in Nigeria, including the federal government of Nigeria's Grooming Enterprise Leaders and National Business Planning Competition, UWIN. With the support of the Coca-Cola Africa Foundation, he has developed a new generation of NGO leaders in Nigeria. A certified business edge trainer for IFC and UNCTAD, expert on entrepreneurship education, Mr. Peter Bamkole consults widely in sub-Saharan Africa on entrepreneurship development and practice.
Another panelist, Amal Hassan.
Hajia Amal Hassan. Hajia Amal Hassan is a leading Nigerian technopreneur with diverse interests across different technology verticals. In 2003, she set up the first organized ICT training institute in Kano that provides IT training to young Nigerians, especially women. In 2013, she founded the Outsource Global, a contact center business process outsourcing that now has offices in Abuja, Lagos, and Kaduna. Under her leadership, Outsource Global has created over 700 jobs. Her entrepreneurial prowess and business acumen continue to set her apart as a highly regarded emerging business leader in Nigeria. Widely regarded as a role model for the girl child and women, especially in northern Nigeria, she has continued to mentor young leaders across her industry. She is a partner in Blue Tag Group, the holding company for Parkway Projects, Health Station, Blue Tag Technologies, Blue Tag Synergy, and Outsource Global. Hajia Amal Hassan is also an alumna of Fortune U.S. Department of State Global Women's Mentoring Program.
And last but not least, Yemisi Ironloye.
Yemisi Ironloye. Yemisi Ironloye is a Nigerian agricultural economist and the founder of Sultry International Limited, an agro-processing mechanized cassava farming business sitting on over 2,000 hectares, which she founded with personal savings. Demand for her high-quality cassava products among Nigerian manufacturing industries continues to grow due to fluctuations in the foreign exchange rates and the scarcity of imported grains such as wheat and barley, which make locally sourced and readily grown raw materials like cassava more cost-effective. Yemisi Ironloye is a privileged nominee of the African Women's Entrepreneurship Program, a trade and investment initiative started by the U.S. State Department.
And so DBN has chosen very, very well some of Nigeria's finest minds. And Professor Nana has the distinguished responsibility of handling this panel while I go to drink some water. In the meantime, I'd like to remind you that our hashtag is DevBankNG. And we also have other platforms. If you look inside your program, you can join the conversation. It's time for the panel to start. Give them a round of applause to encourage them. Professor Nana. The technicians are on their way. There you go.
Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. I am Professor Nana, and I'll be the moderator for this panel discussion. Hopefully I'm audible enough. Okay, so let me try to make a concerted effort to recapitulate the previous speaker's central thrust of their arguments. The first speaker, the chairman, he made emphasis on jobless growth. He talked about the need for a case for structural transformation through local production, as well as intensifying trade amongst African countries and international, across the continent of Africa. Also, Dr. Kaberuka emphasized on Nigeria's overemphasis on commodities, poor diversification overall, but that's slowly changing. Also, we talked about the quality education that we need to develop in Nigeria in order to transform the country, as well as achieving inclusive growth through the MSME segment of our economy. Also, Dr. Mansour Mukhtar, in his lead paper discussion, discussed extensively on in order to improve the MSME segment of the economy, we have to develop a supportive legal and regulatory framework. Also mentioned strengthening financial institutions. This cannot be overemphasized. And also capacity building, because on the one hand, access to finance is just one key ingredient. But if you don't have the capacity to actually judiciously utilize those funds, what's the point? He also mentioned facilitation of trade and value chain integration, ultimately to transform the economy as we know it. So that, in a nutshell, is the central thrust of each discussion and presentations we had earlier. The panel here is a very dynamic one. We have 3 women you can see, so we're evenly matched. Okay, so sometimes what happens in the MSc segment and in Nigeria as a whole, we don't truly appreciate the pains or the challenges the segment goes through until it actually dawns on us, until it's personalized. So in the nutshell, I would like to begin with, you know what? Let's start with Yemisi. How are you doing today? Can you please share with the audience some of your experience in starting your Sultry International Limited and the opportunities you believe your institution or your firm has to offer the country in the MSME segment?
Thank you very much. The challenges in setting up Sultry International Limited were quite enormous because we decided we wanted to do a business in the rural environment. The village that we chose had no power, no water. There was no even access road. When we started, we used to park like a kilometer away and then trek down to the village to even start consultation. So it started from even assessing the forest we wanted to work with. But we decided that was what we wanted to do. We wanted to do a business that was going to add value to the smallholder farmers. And since that was our choice, then we had to face the issues that were available. 2, we didn't have power. There was no power at all. There was no water. All we had was just the land and then the people. And I saw that as great resource. For me, that was great strength. And I was ready to build on the 2 major resources that was available, and that was the land and then the people. And so for us, we decided that we're going to do a backward integration by working with our smallholder farmers. We started with just about 100 smallholder farmers. Today we have farmers well above 3,000 in the locality. And we also chose a crop that farmers were used to. So we invested a whole lot of our equity in training the farmers, making sure the farmers are able to have a brain twist of cultivating for money, that they should farm for commercial instead of just farming for food. And we were able to do a good job of that by increasing their livelihood, because as at that time farmers were farming less than 1 hectare, earning less than 100,000 on 1 hectare per annum. And today we have a cross section of about 2,000 out of our 4,000 farmers earning well above 2 million per annum by supplying the crops to the factory. Then for us also, we were producing starch to the multinationals, the confectionery industries, who were in turn using it to provide the basic needs that we use every day, the beverages, the seasoning, and all of that. So it's a strong value chain. So the challenges were enormous. They were quite enormous, but we were resolute that was the pathway to go. We felt that was the only way we could be able to impact on the community. Today, when we started, we have less than 10% of women in our farming team. Today, we have close to 40% women in the farming group. And initially, it was basically only old men, the owners of the land. But because their families are earning money today, we have their children even migrating back to Alaide village. The village where we reside that I just described to you, today have power. We've been able to extend power to them. Today, this village have water as part of our CSR. We've also extended hands to about 6 other villages that have benefited from the growth that we have experienced. The company have grown. We've grown from just 1 factory to 2 factories, and today we are pioneering the first sorbitol plant in the whole of Africa. So all from cassava. So as the growth is happening, we are growing. The multinationals are buying more. We are also increasing the farmers, and the livelihood of the farmers are equally being expanded as we also grow.
Thank you, Yemisi. Very good. Professor Ekbo, please share with us some of the macroeconomic challenges we have in the country, because I know she mentioned something to do with power being a mitigating factor, or rather prohibiting to growth. So can you please walk us through some of the challenges in terms of the macroeconomic context for Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much, Prof. The keynote speaker and the lead presenter, they did present some of the macro challenges that face the economy. You know, the MSMEs operate within the wider economy. They're not on their own. For example, if the economy is not well managed, it affects the MSMEs. We have, as of present, if we want to be honest, the economy is still at the stage of what we call stagflation. It's a high unemployment rate. Inflation is still double digit. The growth is about 2%, which is less than the growth of population. And what we mean here, even if we recover, we are still in a downturn, in a sense. The misery index for the country is about 85% and growing. So with those few macro indices, of course, I've left out the lending rates in the wider economy for about 25%, although the CBN has various intervention funds that insist on single digit. These pose problems for the MSMEs. And so the role they can play, their optimum level, we've not reached that yet. We know that in so many countries in the world, developed countries, MSMEs are engines of growth. For example, in Nigeria, if we combine all of them, we are told they're about 37 million. Okay? So if, for example, each, as the last speaker said, even if each employs one person, you are talking about 37 million jobs. Okay? And that will go a long way to help the unemployment situation. Now, macro also related at the macro level, in terms of the wider economy. The problem of insecurity in the country also faces the MSMEs. So the way to go, in my view, is that the monetary authorities are doing their best. We need more from the fiscal side. So that with a combination of the monetary and fiscal policy, we have a better macroeconomic environment for MSMEs to operate on. Otherwise, just giving them credit, which some of them claim they have access, many of them say they don't still have access to credit. It will be an illusion. So we need a better macroeconomic environment for them to operate on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think this would be a perfect time to segue into speaking with Amal. Amal is the founder of Outsource Global. Please, Amal, can you share your experience with us? Because she has a phenomenal story that I believe the students up there in the gallery should actually appreciate regarding entrepreneurship and having the entrepreneurial spirit to operate in Nigeria.
I started my first business in 2003 with an IT training center in Kano. I'm from Kano. And by 2005, I realized that we've trained a lot of IT professionals and we couldn't get them, they couldn't get employed. So I realized that I'm training them, but I'm not changing their lives. So I started researching on what we could do to change the employment situation of our people and our country. And I stumbled on BPO, business process outsourcing. I looked at India, and I realized that at the time that I was researching, they provided 2.2 million jobs to people every year, and it keeps on growing. So I looked at the parameters for outsourcing. Business process outsourcing provided a lot of jobs to millions of people all over the world. So I said, why not Nigeria? We have very good English-speaking people. We have very good educated workforce. We have better timeline than India. So I said, why not? And I started moving towards establishing Outsource Global, which is today Outsource Global. I started in Kano. I got to almost 70% completion. I had a problem. I moved to Kaduna, started all over again. I got to almost 70% completion. I had another problem. I moved to Abuja, started all over again. It took me 8 years to start the company. I started it 4 times and failed. I kept on starting all over again. So even after going live, I don't know, I've not explained what BPO is. Companies in UK, US, and Australia outsource a segment of their business for countries, for other companies to handle, usually in less developed countries where labor is very cheap. So when I went live with a domestic client, I packed my bag, went to the US, and I started looking for companies to outsource a segment of their business to us here in Nigeria. I met a lot of people, and they all kept on telling me the same thing. Nigeria is not a well-known outsourcing destination. You as a company have never done this before, even though we set it up according to international standard from day one. We set up to compete with India and other outsourcing destinations, but you've never done it before. I packed my bag from Washington. I met somebody, and he took me to San Francisco. And the person introduced me to about 15 companies at the time. Each and every one of them was telling me the same thing. Nigeria is not a well-known outsourcing destination. Why should we move our operations to you? Until I spoke to the 15th person, and I told him, give me 5 seats, 5 of your customer service seats. I will give you 3 months free of charge. If you don't like it, you walk away. And that guy took a chance on me and gave me 5 seats. Within the first month, we proved them wrong. We were given, thank you. We were given American accent. I'm very sure a lot of you have called call centers in America or in any company and you hear Indian speaking. Please, no offense to any Indian. So America was, at the time that I was there, I started selling my business to American companies. An average American is tired of the Indian accent. And we were able to give them alternative. Today, Outsource Global is 3 years old. We have over 850 employees. Most of them, thank you. Most of them outsource to the US market. We just started serving UK and Japan. Our approach is different. I don't want to talk too much. Should I continue? So I looked at more of process instead of customer service and call centers. So I looked at Nigeria. We have every skill set that is required to serve the international market. So we have a lot of lawyers graduate from our law school. So I went to a legal firm in the US and I said, outsource your entire paralegal work to us. So they started with 3 lawyers, and today they are about 70 lawyers. I looked at medical records. We graduate a lot of people with physics, chemistry, biology with that knowledge, and in Nigeria, I don't even know what they do here. So I approached a medical record company, and I outsourced those people to handle medical records and data. We looked at social media content filtering. We looked at IT support services. We looked at the normal call center service that India is offering. So right now, what we tell the world, not only America, we are hoping to enter other markets as well, is whatever service you have, we have the skill sets in Nigeria to match it.
Thank you.
Today, our lawyers are doing very well, working out of Abuja and Kaduna, and they're solving cases in the US. They wake up every day, they come to the center in Abuja or Kaduna, and they solve actual US cases in US together with senior lawyers in the US. So I always tell people we have the best talents in Nigeria. Whatever the world is offering today, we can offer much more than that. All we need is structure and ability to show ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the definition of surviving to thriving. Okay. This individual is a lady with a magnificent background and a reputation that precedes her. Ndidi, please share with us some of your experience so we can have a better understanding of who you are and how you fit into the MSME segment.
Thank you. That's a tough act to follow. So I've been in the MSME segment for almost 20 years. First came back at 25 to help start the Fate Foundation when Fola Adeola pioneered entrepreneurship development for youth in Nigeria. We did the first business plan competition, first incubator, and from there started Leap Africa in 2002. And I can tell you that it was amazing teaching SMEs. At Leap, what we focused on was governance, helping SMEs institute boards of directors, and ethics. And then the third thing was around succession. Because one of the things that propelled me to start Leap Africa was the fact that most companies die with their founders in Nigeria and in Africa. It's a global phenomenon, but in this context, it's even a more pronounced phenomenon. So Leap now works in 6 African countries. We're very fortunate to have Claire Mashaye as one of our distinguished board members. Oh. And she's extremely committed to MSMEs. And Leap has published 11 books and curriculum that's now used by many, many organizations across Africa to teach SMEs. But I have to say that in spite of those experiences, starting organizations to support SMEs and create the BDS environment, starting my own small business has been the real eye-opener. So I'm the co-founder of Ace Foods, an agro-processing company that turns 10 this year, that sources spices and herbs, grains and cereals from about 10,000 farmers, and we process for the local market. And we started this company because it's one thing to complain about imports that are coming in. It's another thing to say, let's source locally and displace these imports and address the high rates of malnutrition in our environment. 1 out of every 3 Nigerian children is malnourished. So there's a crisis. And yet, we're net importers of food when 60% of our population works in agriculture. So my husband and I started Ace Foods. We also started Sahel Consulting and Sahel Capital, which both work in the agri space. Now, through this experience, I'll just share 3 lessons, which I think are relevant for the development bank. The first is that we need an enabling policy environment with consistent policies. MSMEs cannot thrive when you have policy flip-flopping all the time. And it's critical, and I love the fact that DBN is focused on data-driven policy making and creating that enabling environment and supporting financial institutions to get it right. Because it's one thing for us to come in and make that investment. It's another thing to know that that investment is worth it and that next year the environment will not change. We've seen that in cassava. I work very closely with Sultry in cassava. We've seen that in yam. We're so excited about some of the news we're hearing in dairy, and my phone has been ringing off the hook because I work in local dairy development. But we need to see that consistent development policy making. The second is really an enabling environment for companies to go from micro to small, small to medium, and medium to large. Most of our businesses are stagnant. They can't move up the chain. We celebrate some of our mega businesses, not realizing that majority are stagnant. Peter Bankole and I know so many companies that have stayed the same size for the last 20 years. They're just struggling for survival. What do they need? They need access to talent, they need technical skills, and they need access to financing. Now, the talent piece, I'm so excited to hear your story because that hasn't been our story in manufacturing. In Nigeria, we're struggling with talents. Ace Foods now has 90 employees, but we could have had 500. We can't find them. because we haven't had a culture of manufacturing. We've had a culture of importing and repackaging. Unfortunately, that's not going to work. That's not going to drive us out of poverty. Agriculture can create millions of jobs and sustainable growth and transformative growth, but we need the skills. Now, we go to all our universities. We started a program called Sahel Scholars Program. When you ask the agriculture students if they want to stay in the sector, most of them don't. In fact, it's their fifth choice course. They studied agriculture because they couldn't get medicine, pharmacy, and many other things. They're dying to get out. And what we're trying to do is change their mindset to believe that this sector has promise and that they can make money in the sector. Now, we need that transformation, and we need partnerships and support with many other institutions. And then the final thing that we really need in the SME space is partnerships. And unfortunately, there's too much competition from private sector instead of partnerships. And the organizations that should be collaborating to lift us up are actually keeping us down. And so what we need is seamless partnerships across the sector. I'll tell you that the impact a company like ACE has made has been catalytic, because over 10 years, so many people have entered the sector because of us. Now we have competition, because people say if they think there's money there, there must be money there. Let me start a company. So even though we started a company that processes spices and is displacing imports, we are partnering with companies like Unilever that are sourcing from us, where historically they never would. Or flour mills that was importing and is now buying from us. We're also in all the major supermarkets. When we started, we're probably the first. Now there are like 10 competitors. So innovation is key for SMEs. So you can be catalytic if you start. And then you can actually create jobs across the entire value chain, from the 10,000 farmers who buy from us, who we buy from, to the women who are carrying our products across the country, to the children who are eating our food and getting healthier and no longer malnourished. That impact is catalytic. So I really encourage you to take a chance on SMEs. As bankers, learn about what we do, understand us so you can support us through the trajectory from micro to small, from small to medium, so we can celebrate the mega businesses out there. Thank you very much.
Eloquently said, eloquently said. So, yes, in some sectors, there is I guess, a vacuum in terms of the talent, but again, it's not one size fits all for every sector. Some sectors outperform others, as well as the composition of actors in those sectors. But segueing into a more pertinent discussion is the notion of capacity building, or technical assistance, if you like. So access to finance has traditionally been a major obstacle, and it still is to a larger extent, since the financing gap in the MSME segment is in the trillions of naira. Nevertheless, a lot of us here may have access to finance, but not the capacity to actually utilize the funds judiciously. In my experience during our monitoring and evaluation exercises, what we have witnessed is a lot of heart in what the MSMEs do, but the technical skills is wanting. Meaning basic notion of bookkeeping, financial record keeping is not there. Also, other challenges is just the structure. And I know commercial banks and the financial institution in general shy away from the sector because of the high risk and the lack of understanding of the various business plans and models of the various MSMEs. Nevertheless, this will be a perfect time to segue into capacity building, and no one better than the man from EDC to guide us in this discussion. Peter Bankole, please.
Thank you, Joseph, and really thank you, DBN, for inviting me. I'm glad that most people are beginning to see that there is more to MSME development than financing. We started 2003 with a class of 20, and now we have actually impacted well over 100,000 small businesses across Nigeria. So what I'm telling you, or what I'm about to tell you, is from experience. I will say the constraints that we see can be broadly tagged MISFIT. MISFIT is an acronym that more or less summarizes what we are seeing in terms of MSME development. So the M will be for lack of access to markets. And I think our keynotes mentioned something like that this morning. That we need, and you also mentioned that we need to connect small businesses across the value chain of big businesses. Once that is done, financing becomes a very small issue because already market is there. The I is infrastructure, and I think we also mentioned around infrastructure. By the time the free continental free trade is going to happen, MSMEs will benefit. And even if there are challenges in one country, you can go to another country where infrastructure is better because you can walk across. What is going to drive MSMEs is innovation. So long as you can innovate, location becomes what? A non-issue. The S is where I play, and that is the support services or technical assistance or whatever you may call it. The challenge, Ahmad, that you went through from Kano to Kaduna before reaching Kaduna could have been shortened if we have enough accelerators, capacity building organizations that can support that early stage growth, that can make you to move from idea to market very quickly. And we need more of EDCs to be able to do things like that. And then, of course, F is the one that most of us always talk about, which is the financing. But the financing in Nigeria is fraught with so many issues. And I'm hoping that DBN, together with other financial institutions, will think through this. Because it's not just about the money. There are three issues around capital. First, how much, how long? What is the cost of capital to SMEs? And in terms of tenure, up until now, long tenure for us is 1 year. Can you imagine? So thanks to these up to 10 years that DBN is talking about. But more importantly, the issue of collateral has bogged down a lot of SMEs. And so we need to think of new ways. We need to deepen the markets. So things around cash flow lending. Even these days I'm hearing refundable grants and things like that. We need to think outside. In fact, we need to destroy the box so that we just think. The next I, so is misfit. So the second I is information. So we have issues with information. But thank God for mobile technology and all kinds of things happening. As MSMEs, you have, unrivaled access to information these days. And what we should be using is to use this to bridge information. In fact, the last one is technology. And again, internet, web 2.0, hopefully going to 4.0, is going to bridge that. Last month, I had one of my innovative entrepreneurs coming up, and he says to me, the new oil is data. The new oil is data. And with data, they can change the course of any organization. And today is not going to be the monopoly of big businesses anymore, because small businesses will also have access to data. So for me, that's a summary of misfit. I'm glad to continue hereafter. Thank you.
So let's talk about longer tenor funding. So yes, you rightly said, historically, longer tenor funds from the perspective of financial institutions have always been 1 year or to maybe 3 years. But we can't really squarely hold them responsible for that, can we? Because if we have an enabling environment, perhaps they'll be more likely to increase the tenor. On the other hand, though, for the DBN loans, we offer up to 10-year money, but the challenge still remains is ensuring that there are enough MSMEs out there with business plans that warrant that 10-year funding. That's the challenge we have. So I guess my question, rather to some of you good folks on the panel here, would be, what can we do to actually have a meeting of the minds between MSME players and the banks? Because I feel like trust, perhaps, could be a missing link here. You want to share some thoughts, Peter?
Let me start. I think there has to be a concerted effort by everyone. I see in the audience Michael Wong from the World Bank. We had the UN for 3 years, and it was transparently done in such a way that even we did not know who we were marking to be able to get the best of ideas out. So we should, first of all, say to ourselves, Nigerians have people with very good ideas. We have to look for a system of bringing those ideas to the fore. We need to encourage these guys to do things the right way by building their capacities before we then move to funding. That's from the public sector side. In the same way, we can do on the public sector side. I know DBN is doing, quite a number of other institutions are doing. So we must all have what I call a unified objective. If the banks says you don't have good business plans or you don't have good ideas, why don't you work with intermediaries and make sure that we develop them rather than complaining? I think for me is to say we are in this together, not it is them against us. Thank you.
Well said, well said. In terms of the longer tenor, back to the longer tenor funds. So what we have seen historically in Nigeria, there's a mismatch, if you will, of funds. Say a manufacturer who may need 7-year funds and he accepts 3-year funds from the banks, and ultimately the loan goes bad, making it worse off for other people in that industry or in that segment to access credit. Consequently, we have a situation whereby a lot of folks aren't able to access credit in Nigeria. Now, with the DBN coming on board, I don't want to, perform a public service announcement, but I will. So we were able to onboard multiple PFIs, 20 plus, disperse billions out the door, which was said by various speakers. And yet, when we go see the various players in the space, there's still a cry out for more. More needs to be done. So it's safe to say not one institution can solve this problem. So I agree with you when you say it's not them or us, it's all collaborative. Everybody needs to come together. But the question I will have to pose is, what must happen for that to actually occur, for us to come together? Because we all have Nigeria's interest at heart. We want to grow the economy. We all agree, the statistics shows that the MSMEs are the engine of economic growth. I mean, employment, GDP, and what have you. So, if we know all this to be true, need I say more? What is all the fuss about? We have to come together to achieve this issues of access to finance and, for goodness sake, reduce the unemployment challenge in the country. Please, Amal, you said something to the effect of you have 850 or so employees.
Yeah.
This didn't happen overnight, did it?
No.
Okay, thank you for saying that. Because a lot of students, I'm speaking to the students in the gallery now, they always come and ask questions, like they have a business plan, can they get funding, and so on. And they want to be a CEO right off the bat. And I smiled, I said, yes, you're very ambitious, I love that, but maybe start small. Maybe call yourself a manager, start from there. He said, no, manager is too small, I have to be the president. So I think perhaps we are getting into a situation where we care about the titles more so than the work itself. Nevertheless, for the students up in the gallery, Amal has a story which I hope each and every one of you listen to, because time and time again, you have to have grit, heart, and perseverance to make it as an entrepreneur. Each and every one of us here has business plans in our head, but may not follow through with it for many reasons, of course. But to be successful, you have to follow through. I know Ndidi wanted to mention something. Please go ahead. Amal, please go ahead.
Okay, you were asking me a question about it didn't happen overnight.
Yes.
I mentioned it earlier. It took me 8 years to start the company. I started it 4 times.
4 times, people. 4 times.
4 times. And for the students, if you're here, please go and apply. We still not need more people. We take people every day. Every day there's a demand for Nigeria's talent, and we're actually in high demand for very good talent, so they should go and apply.
Thank you for that.
I wanted to build on Peter's point and just talk about 2 things. Number 1 is we need to rebuild the trust. You had mentioned that. There's a lot of distrust of MSMEs because many people don't believe they have the skills. And so what we would need to see is less financial institutions setting up their own enterprise development programs and more partnering with existing enterprise development programs to scale. So I see so many banks having conferences or SME training programs, or even CBN, sorry to take this on, has its own enterprise development centers across the country. Meanwhile, you have nonprofits who know how to do this well, like EDC or Fate Foundation or Leap Africa, that need to scale and have perfected the art of training SMEs. You can partner with them, and it's cheaper to work with them, and you can reach more SMEs across Nigeria. I remember when UWIN was starting, I told the World Bank, I can give you in every state in Nigeria a strong nonprofit that can do this well. That's what you have in the United States. That's what you have in the UK. Partner with these nonprofits to develop entrepreneurs. Then you can trust the ones they send you. So we need more partnerships. The second thing is we need some streamlining, and we need to have a pipeline. Let's be honest. In this sector right now, we have Bank of Industry, we have DBN, we have, in many states, we have programs. Most SMEs are confused about where to go, who to align with, where to start. They send me emails on a daily basis saying, I need financing. Where should I go? If we could have a simple communication message that says, if you need this type of financing, go here. Or a one-stop shop online, financinginnigeria.org. That is an entry point for every SME that needs financing. It will make a huge difference. Because there's an information problem. There's
information asymmetry.
Yeah, information asymmetry. There's a huge gap between the sources and uses of financing, and most people don't know how to enter. And then the final suggestion, which I think you can take from this conference and say this is something that we can hold up, is that you can have a convening, call it a closed-door convening, with some of the ministries at the federal and state level and say, guys, let's work together. Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Women, just let's start partnering because we have the same constituency who have the same challenges. And if we can partner, then the youth will hear that their voices is being, their issues are being addressed. The women will say, oh, my issues are being addressed. Because right now there's a lot of hopelessness in the land. And when Nigerians don't have hope, it can be destructive. We need to restore the hope and show them that we're working.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just to build up on what she had said, I think the issue of awareness is very important. For example, government in formulating or even trying to socialize policies on MSMEs, do you take into account the experiences of these practitioners? It's very important. A lot of times it is done just bringing together people in government who don't have the experience, who don't bring in practitioners to share their experiences. Here we have those who have succeeded. There are thousands of others who will have succeeded if they are aware of what's going on. So for me, as we mentioned earlier, the policies that maybe the CBN is putting in place and the others, they are not sustainable going forward. For it to be sustainable, we have to include the practitioners as we design policies that affect MSMEs. And it's very, very crucial. A lot of people, for example, in the part of Nigeria I come from, very few of the MSMEs are even aware of DBN. You'll be surprised. So many microfinance banks are not even aware of what is happening. So awareness is very important. And government's commitment to this process, not just talking about it, but walking the talk. Thank you.
Just to add to what my other colleagues have said, I think the banks have a major role to play, because whenever a fund is provided like this, it still has to go through the bank. And the bank have their own policies. They have their own structures, which does not very, very well encourage the entrepreneurs, I mean the SMEs. I would like to share what I went through to start Sultry, and that will give you an idea of how we need to start to do a rethink. Like I said, I just decided I wanted to be a social entrepreneur. So decided to just go into one forest, design my project, had a beautiful business plan. I didn't have much money. All I had was just some little savings, that small piece of land, and wealth of experience in what I wanted to do. How was I going to fund it? I needed collateral. And every MSME sitting down here today needs collateral to push that idea beyond just an idea to become a business. So what are we going to put in place? There's still a gap. That gap is brilliant guy, wonderful idea, business plan done. He's even started it on a small scale, but he needs to jump it into a business. I think DBN should think about that. Now, I spent 2 years just roaming the bush, mosquito biting me up and down. You can't imagine the kind of thing I went through. I went to my bank, First Bank. But it's a good story, so I can mention the bank. And I said, I need money for this. And the first time they came there, they were like, this will never work. Because even in the town, it has not worked, and you want to put a factory in this place? Okay, I told them, give me my list. Give me the list of things I need to do for it to work. Then come back in 3 months. So they gave me a bit, and I just started working on them. Because I was determined I wanted to leave my footprint. To cut the story short, after coming about 4 times, they finally sent a lady. Because I kept pushing. I kept saying, I knew there was this intervention from CBN, and that was the one I wanted. Because I didn't have money, I can't afford 24%. I wanted to access that one of 9%. Then they sent me a Salvation woman who came. I said she was Salvation because she was the key person who made South Street to be today. And then she came and she was like, we will do it. I'm going to invest in you. I will never forget that statement. I'm investing in you because you are living in this village. Left Lagos to come and live here, then I am sure it's going to succeed. And so she went to her bank. I said, let's invest in her. She's the one we are investing in because she's put everything she's got into it. So we are sure it's not going to fail. Thank God Sultry did not fail today. Today, one of the best, if not one of the best crop producing companies today, producing top grade food grade starch to multinationals, employing young people, youth. Right? That same village today, you can imagine the number of caliber of people who visit to just come and copy the model. We need to start investing in people. There must be a scheme where you invest. You say, we are giving you this loan because it is you. We believe in you. We can see through that you will take this through. And that's why we can have innovations coming up. We can have good new ideas coming up. We can have new things springing up. There must just be something somewhere, a loan somewhere, grant somewhere that can provide young people to be able to bring out their dreams. If everything is laid on the platter of you must have collateral, we will not move from where we are. And we just must move.
Thank you, Yemisi.